It was a cool Monday morning when 14-year-old Sofia Oliveira walked into the imposing Progresso Bank agency wearing her school uniform, a simple blouse, skirt, and closed shoes. Sofia felt a mix of nervousness and pride. Today, she would make her first bank deposit alone, carrying the 5,000 DS scholarship check she had earned through her excellent academic performance. The money was proof of her effort, but it also represented her independence. She was determined to handle it on her own without her parents' help. Sofia approached the counter with the check, her heart racing, clutching her folder of documents tightly. Behind the counter stood manager Beatriz Almeida, a woman in her early 40s, impeccably dressed with an air of superiority. She noticed Sofia's arrival, and her gaze became sharper. When Sofia handed over the check, Beatriz's professional smile faltered for a moment. A check of this amount? Beatriz's voice rose slightly, enough for nearby customers to hear. For a student your age, where did this come from? Sofia felt her face flush, but quickly regained her composure. It's my academic scholarship, she explained calmly, her hands trembling slightly as she handed over the award letter and her school ID. I have all the documentation here. The teller, a young man named Ricardo, took the check from her, his expression shifting from neutral to suspicious. He held the check up to the light, examining it like a detective searching for a clue. After several long seconds, he turned to Beatriz, who was watching the interaction with growing distrust. Beatriz approached the counter without even glancing at Sofia. We've had a lot of fake checks lately, she murmured, her tone laced with disdain. I'll need to verify everything. Sofia's anxiety spiked. She had expected a simple deposit, but now she was being treated like a criminal. She looked at her backpack, realizing with a wave of panic that her phone was still in her school locker. I need to call my mom, Sofia said, her voice faltering slightly. She's waiting for me at home. I don't have my phone with me. Beatriz barely acknowledged her. That's not our problem, she snapped coldly. You'll wait until we finish our verification. The words stung. Sofia stood still as Beatriz walked away, arrogance in every step. The bank manager moved to a corner, arms crossed, a smug expression on her face, as she watched Sofia stand motionless in the middle of the busy bank floor. Sofia's heart pounded in her chest as she stood there, unable to move. Around her, the bustle of the bank continued, but she felt as though the entire room was staring at her. Whispers began to rise among the other customers, some looking at her with open curiosity, others with thinly veiled judgment. She stood there for what felt like an eternity. As the minutes ticked by, the humiliation only grew. Each second felt like forever. The marble floor beneath her feet seemed to grow colder with every passing minute. Despite the situation, Sofia's mind remained sharp. She had always been observant, noticing how people interacted with one another, the subtle differences in how they were treated, how some were met with deference while others were ignored or dismissed. She had seen it before, but today she was living it. She wanted to scream, to demand her documents back, but she remained silent. Her father had always taught her to stay calm in the face of adversity. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that the way she was being treated had nothing to do with the validity of the scholarship and everything to do with her appearance. Across the room, Sofia could hear Beatriz speaking to Ricardo in a low, almost conspiratorial tone. I'm telling you, we need to maintain our standards here, Beatriz said. We can't just let anyone walk in and expect to be treated like they belong. Sofia's heart sank. The words hit like a slap in the face. She was being judged, not for who she was, but for how she looked. Her hands clenched into fists, and she fought to stay composed. She had worked hard for that scholarship, earned it on merit, and now it felt like it was slipping through her fingers. She looked at the clock on the wall. More time passed. The whispers continued. The only thing she could do now was wait. Sofia Oliveira was not an ordinary teenager. Although she lived in one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods, she had always valued simplicity over excessive luxury. Her family's home was elegant, but understated. No ostentatious displays of wealth, just tastefully decorated rooms and a strong sense of community. Sophia's mother, Dr. Helena Oliveira, was a renowned financial specialist who ran one of the most respected firms in the country. As a woman who built her career from the ground up, Helena instilled in Sophia a strong sense of independence and the belief that true success came from effort, not privilege. The Oliveira family's wealth was substantial, but it was never flaunted. Dr. Helena believed in the power of education and hard work. She often reminded Sophia that wealth wasn't just about accumulating money, it was about using it for good. Sophia absorbed those lessons well, excelling in her studies and earning a full scholarship to Verum College, a prestigious school known for its academic rigor. This wasn't an achievement handed to her on a silver platter. Sophia worked tirelessly, earning her scholarship through merit, not her mother's name. Her friends often marveled at her ability to balance studies, extracurricular activities, and a part-time job. But Sophia didn't mind. She liked the challenge. It was her way of proving, to herself and the world, that she could succeed on her own. Her mother always supported her, of course, but never allowed Sophia to take shortcuts. "I want you to have the same opportunities as others," Helena would say, "but I also want you to walk on your own 2 feet." Sophia's decision to handle the bank deposit alone was another step toward independence. She was 14, but she felt ready to navigate the world as an adult. The scholarship check, the pinnacle of her hard work, felt like a symbol of her growing maturity. That morning, before heading to the bank, Sophia had carefully placed the check in her folder. Her mother was sitting at the breakfast table reviewing financial reports from her firm, but paused to smile at her daughter. "Are you sure you don't want me to go with you?" Helena asked, her warm voice tinged with concern. "I've got this, Mom," Sophia replied with quiet confidence. "I'm 14 now. It's time I learned to do this on my own." Her mother nodded, eyes full of pride. Helena knew Sophia was more than capable, and yet she couldn't help but worry. It was maternal instinct, the desire to protect her child from harm, especially in a world that could sometimes be harsh and cruel. Sophia reassured her. "I'll be fine. I'll go in, make the deposit, and be back before your meeting's even over." It seemed like such a simple task. Sophia never imagined that merely walking into a bank to deposit a scholarship check would turn into such an ordeal. As she stood in the bank's corner, Sophia couldn't help but reflect on the lessons her mother had taught her. She was always raised to believe in justice and equality, to treat people with respect and expect the same in return. But as she stood there, isolated and humiliated, Sophia realized that the world didn't always play by the same rules. She was forced to confront the uncomfortable reality that her appearance, perhaps her skin color, was a factor in how she was being treated. It wasn't something she had fully understood before today. Growing up in her city, she had never experienced discrimination like this. Sure, she had heard about it, read about it in books, but it always seemed so distant, so theoretical. Today, it was her reality. She looked at the clock again, her anxiety increasing. She had been waiting a long time. Her mind raced. Why hadn't anyone come to check on her? Why was she still standing in the corner when all she had done was bring in a legitimate scholarship check to deposit? The longer she remained there, the heavier the situation weighed on her shoulders. Her mother would be waiting at home soon. She needed to call her, but even that had been denied to her. Time moved slowly in the corner where Sophia stood. The weight of the situation pressed down on her. The marble floor beneath her feet felt colder by the minute, and the constant ticking of the wall clock seemed to amplify her growing sense of isolation. People came and went, but no one spoke to her. She was nothing more than an invisible figure, a source of silent judgment in the heart of the bustling bank. As Sophia stood there, her mind started racing. She looked at the other customers, some of whom were being treated with obvious favoritism. A well-dressed elderly couple walked in, greeted warmly and respectfully by Beatriz Almeida, who personally escorted them to a VIP area. Not once had Sophia received such recognition. It was as if she didn't belong in that space, that world of polished marble and mahogany wood. A few minutes later, a young man with a heavy accent approached the counter with papers in hand. Beatrice, watching him from across the room, immediately dismissed him with a dismissive gesture. "Sorry, the system is slow today. It's going to take a while to process your request," she said, her voice laden with indifference. Sophia watched, her stomach churning, as the man walked away clearly frustrated. Yet, when a white couple entered moments later with similar paperwork, Beatrice's demeanor changed completely. She practically beamed as she led them to the counter. "Of course. Let me take care of that for you right away," she said, her voice soft and eager. "You're in good hands here." Sophia's chest tightened with a mix of anger and disbelief. This wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just bad customer service. It was something more sinister, something deeply rooted in prejudice. She knew exactly what was happening. Beatrice was choosing who to treat with respect, and she made it clear that Sophia didn't belong there. Sophia's hands clenched at her sides as she forced herself to remain still, refusing to let her emotions overflow. She had seen this kind of behavior before, subtle, insidious discrimination disguised as customer service, but never had it felt so personal, so painfully real. It was as if the entire bank had turned its back on her simply because of the color of her skin. Beatrice's voice cut through the air again, this time directed at the security guard standing near Sophia. "Keep an eye on her," she instructed, her tone cold and commanding. "Make sure she doesn't try to leave." Sophia's heart pounded. She had to resist the urge to scream against the injustice of it all. Instead, she focused on her breathing, trying to stay calm, trying to block out the pain threatening to consume her. She had been taught to handle difficult situations with grace, but today, everything felt different. Today, she was trapped in a system that didn't see her as a person, but as an inconvenience. Minutes turned into nearly an hour. The only sounds were the occasional rustle of paper, the distant murmur of polite conversations, and the sharp click of Beatrice's heels on the marble floor. Sophia couldn't escape the feeling that she was being watched, that everyone in the bank was observing her, judging her. The whispers grew louder, more frequent. Sophia could hear snippets of conversations, malicious comments, whispers of pity, and a few poorly concealed giggles. She felt small. She felt powerless. The worst part was she wasn't sure if anyone cared. No one came to her defense. No one stepped in to question why she was being treated that way. It was as if her suffering was invisible to them, just part of the background noise of a world that had learned to ignore injustice. Then, just as Sophia's mind was beginning to collapse under the weight of the situation, something caught her attention. Beatrice was speaking to Ricardo, the teller, in hushed tones, her face tense with frustration. "Why is she still here?" Beatrice asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to get rid of her. Make sure she knows she's not welcome." Sophia's stomach churned. She had heard enough. Beatrice's words confirmed what she had feared all along. This wasn't just about a misplaced check or a minor error. It was about something much darker. It was about power, control, and the assumption that people like Sophia didn't belong in places like this. She was a stranger, an inconvenience, a problem to be dealt with. When Beatrice turned around, Sophia couldn't hold back any longer. "I'm not a problem," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I'm here because I earned this scholarship. I'm here to deposit my check like everyone else." Beatrice didn't even look in her direction. Instead, she turned to the security guard, her voice low and commanding. "Take her to the back. Keep her there until we're done with the paperwork." The guard, a large man with an intimidating presence, walked up to Sophia without hesitation. His hand gripped her arm tightly, and he began marching her across the bank lobby. Every eye in the room turned to watch, but no one intervened. Sophia felt the blood rush to her face as she was forcefully escorted away from the teller's counter, her heart racing with a mixture of anger and humiliation. "Stay here," the guard ordered, positioning her in a corner near the back of the room where she was visible to everyone but out of the way. He stepped back, his eyes scanning the room to ensure she stayed put. Sophia stood there, arms crossed over her chest, back straight, and head held high, but inside she was falling apart. As she stood in that corner, her body aching from hours of forced stillness, her thoughts began to spiral. The harsh reality of the situation weighed heavily on her. She had been humiliated, treated like an outcast in a place where she had expected to be treated fairly. Every passing minute dragged on endlessly, and the more she was forced to wait, the more she realized something was deeply wrong. Sophia's eyes scanned the bank, searching for anything that could offer a distraction from the overwhelming feeling of injustice. Her gaze landed on the manager, Beatriz Almeida, who was walking around the room, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. She was talking to a well-dressed, tall and imposing man whom Sophia didn't recognize at first. But something about his behavior seemed familiar. He was someone important, and judging by how Beatriz was speaking to him, he was someone she was eager to impress. The man's name surfaced in Sophia's mind like a bell: Armando Queiroz. Her mother had mentioned the name before in passing when talking about business rivalries. Armando Queiroz was the CEO of the Meridional Financial Group, one of the biggest competitors of the bank Sophia's mother had recently acquired. Sophia's pulse quickened as she watched the exchange between Beatriz and Queiroz. She wasn't close enough to hear the conversation clearly, but she could tell it was serious. Beatriz leaned in toward Queiroz, her voice lowering to almost a whisper as she handed him a manila folder. Sophia's heart raced as she observed. The folder was clearly marked with the word confidential, and although she couldn't distinguish the contents, it was obvious that whatever was inside was important. Sophia's mind was racing. She had watched her mother work for years, building the trust and reputation of the bank, and knew that any breach of trust could be potentially catastrophic. This wasn't a simple business meeting. It was something more, a betrayal in progress. She shifted slightly in her corner, straining to hear more, but her position was far from ideal. Still, she kept her eyes fixed on the two figures. Queiroz looked at the folder, his expression serious, even satisfied. He said something to Beatriz, his words too low to be understood, but the smile that spread across her face told Sophia everything she needed to know. Beatriz wasn't just helping Queiroz, she was actively working against her own company, her own employer. Sophia's stomach turned. It was becoming clearer by the second. Beatriz wasn't just mistreating her because of her race or age. She was using her position in the bank to sabotage it. Sophia had no idea what was in that folder, but she knew it wasn't good. And she knew it had something to do with her mother's company. She felt a sudden wave of determination. No longer just a passive observer, Sophia realized she had to act. She wasn't there just to deposit a check anymore. She had stumbled upon something much bigger, something that could affect her mother's life and career. She couldn't just stand by. Her eyes darted to the small leather-bound notebook she always carried. She had made notes during her time in the bank, recording the discriminatory treatment she witnessed. But this was different. This was critical. She had to document everything she saw, every detail, every whisper. Sophia had no idea what she could do with the information, but she knew she had to keep a record. She had to be prepared. As Beatriz and Queiroz continued their hushed conversation, Sophia quickly opened her notebook, her fingers trembling as she wrote. She noted the time, the names, and the suspicious folder, everything she had observed in those few moments. The conversation between the two ended abruptly when Queiroz stood to leave. Beatriz shook his hand with a smile, her behavior almost too eager. Sophia's heart pounded as Queiroz walked past her toward the exit, his footsteps heavy and purposeful. As soon as he was gone, Beatrice returned to her usual position behind the counter, but her smile had vanished. She was focused now, her attention fully on Sophia, who remained standing in the corner. Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. It was as if Beatrice knew she had witnessed everything. Sophia's thoughts raced. She had seen enough to know something sinister was happening behind the scenes. But what could she do with this information? How could she prove what had happened? Her fingers gripped the pen in her hand, determination hardening. She had been wronged, yes, but now she had a chance to set things right. Not just for herself, but for her mother, for her family, and for everyone else who'd been mistreated by Beatriz Almeida. Sophia wouldn't let this go. She remained silent as the weight of the situation pressed on her. Hours of waiting, hours of humiliation had all led to this moment. She had been wronged, treated as if she didn't belong there. But now she had something far more valuable than her check or her documents. She had the truth, and it was time to make that truth known. As if summoned by her thoughts, the doors of the bank opened, and in walked her mother, Helena Oliveira. Sophia's heart leapt. Helena's presence was magnetic. She was calm, composed, and impeccably dressed, a sharp contrast to the chaos unfolding. In the bank, Beatriz Almeida, who had overseen Sophia's approval, straightened up the moment she saw Helena. "Dr. Oliveira?" Beatriz greeted her, her voice dripping with false politeness. "We weren't expecting you today. How can I help you?" But Helena didn't respond with pleasantries. She turned immediately to Sophia, her eyes narrowing as she saw her daughter standing alone, still isolated in the corner. A flicker of anger crossed Helena's face before she masked it with an outward calm. "Sophia, are you okay?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. Sophia nodded, struggling to keep her emotions in check. "I'm fine, Mom," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of thoughts inside her. "But there's something you need to know." Sophia pulled out her leather-bound notebook and began to recount everything she had observed during her time in the bank, the preferential treatment given to white clients, the cold indifference shown to her, and most importantly, the conversation between Beatriz and Armando Queiroz. She read her notes aloud, her voice unwavering as she described the suspicious meeting and the folder marked "confidential." Helena listened attentively, her expression hardening with each word. When Sophia finished, Helena turned to Beatriz, her gaze sharp. "Ms. Almeida," said Helena, her tone icy, "I believe you owe my daughter an apology, and I think you owe me an explanation." Beatriz's confident facade began to crack. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, but Helena cut her off. "I know exactly what you've been doing," Helena replied, her voice controlled but firm. "You've been conspiring with Armando Queiroz, handing over confidential information to a competitor. This isn't just a case of poor customer service. This is corporate espionage." The bank fell silent. No one moved. Sophia watched Beatriz's face turn pale, her composure crumbling under the weight of Helena's words. She opened her mouth to defend herself, but couldn't find the words. Helena didn't give her a chance. "You're fired, Ms. Almeida," she said, "effective immediately." The words rang with a finality that seemed to echo through the entire bank. Security was called, and the same slow-moving guard who had previously escorted Sophia to the corner now moved toward Beatriz. "Please escort Ms. Almeida out," Helena instructed. As Beatriz was led away, her pride utterly shattered, Helena turned to the room. "This institution will undergo a full review," said Helena, her voice commanding. "We will implement changes to ensure that no one is treated with the same disrespect my daughter faced today. No one." The room was still silent. Sophia's heart beat steadily in her chest as she watched her mother take control of the situation. Her strength a pillar Sophia had always admired. The following months were a whirlwind of changes at the bank. The investigation into Beatriz's actions uncovered not only her attempts to sabotage Helena's business, but also a pattern of discriminatory behavior. The bank's leadership was restructured, and a new training program on fair and equitable banking practices was implemented. Sophia's experience became a turning point, not just for the bank, but for herself as well. She was invited to speak at Collegio Vertice, where she shared her story with other students. Sophia used her voice to advocate for financial education and the importance of equality in all spaces. Standing before her peers, she smiled, knowing that her painful experience had shaped her into someone who could stand up for others. She had transformed her moment of humiliation into a platform for change, and her mother's example taught her that even in the face of injustice, it was possible to make a difference. Amazing story, right? Sophia's journey shows that no one should be judged by their appearance, and that the truth always finds a way to come out. And you, what would you have done in her place? Leave your comment. Don't forget to like if you enjoyed the story, subscribe for more, and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.